Hello, my name is Meredith. Today's video is going to be a recap of all the books that I've been reading in the spring. Today I'm just going to be discussing the books I have read, some of my ratings, and some stuff I liked, some stuff I didn't like. So let's get into it. Let's start off with a controversial one, the love hypothesis. So I am a biological researcher in a research lab that does researchy things with proteins and genetics and cancer and immunology. And I didn't really like this book. It gave me a lot of anxiety because I'm in this field. I don't know. It made me glad that I'm not doing a PhD, but it was also like, this is causing me work stress, and that is not what I want in my reading time. I didn't think that the two of them had a lot of chemistry, and I didn't love the main character. I was thinking about my own like lab environment and like the professionalism of the everybody on the floor. Obviously it's fiction, and so it's like, oh, anything can happen, whatever, whatever. But I just found it unrealistic because of the fact that I literally work in an environment very similar to that, and I just couldn't see that happening. Like in any environment like that. It just feels very much like wish fulfillment. I don't know. I just didn't love it. Yeah, that's my opinion. I rated it like a 2. Sorry, everybody. It wasn't my thing. I don't think I was quite the target for this. Well, I was exactly the target, so I don't really know what I'm talking about. Yeah, okay, let's move on. Uprooted. I don't really remember Uprooted very well. I think it was good. It felt very fairy tale-esque, like it was kind of pulled away from deep point of view. It just had a fairy tale tone because it wasn't like right there in the character's emotions. I liked it. It like did a lot on a very epic scale within a very small amount of pages because it's like a standalone book. So it took you through a journey where the stakes like went really high in a very short amount of time, and I thought that was cool. What do I rate this book? I don't know, like 3, 3.5, something like that. Okay, then I read the entire Shadow and Bone series. Okay, so I rate the whole series like a 3.5. I tend to rate really harshly, and I know that. But what I do as a person is I'm looking at a book and saying, how is this done well? How is this done poorly to capture a reader's attention and heart? And so I'm not going to like tear a book down, but I'm also going to think critically about it. And so, like for the love hypothesis, there were some things that just didn't vibe with me, but I'm not going to say it's a horrible book because I don't think it is. And tons of people love it. So it just wasn't for me. But anyway, so Shadow and Bone, I think technically, like critically, is landing around a 3 for me. But I loved it. This book, I think, really brought back my love of reading and like reminded me that I was able to read a book in like 1 or 2 sittings. It just gave me that sense of like, wow, reading is a beautiful adventure and there's so much to explore. I love this book because of that, and it just really captured my attention. The rest of the series did too. I just really, really loved it. Critically, it's probably about a 3. Like it wasn't the most like technically advanced, but I also think it was written well, like line by line. I really liked the main character. I really related to her. Some people don't. That's okay. I love a friends to lovers story. Some people don't. That's okay. So I think it was just like very attuned to what I really love and look for. And so, yeah, I thought it was really cool. It didn't have that many subplots, which I think is interesting. It was a very straightforward, very simple story. So it didn't have as much to offer as other stories. And I totally understand that. But like for what it was, I really liked it. Okay, I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. This was probably the only 5-star read that I have had this year. And it's not the type of book that I typically read, but I was like, hey, this looks really interesting. It's obviously heavy, but I think it dives into a specific sphere of mental health in a really interesting way through vignettes. And so it tells the story of this person's life, and you feel like you grow up with her and you come to understand like what her life actually has been with her, like as she realizes it. The real-time revelation of what's happening is really, really beautifully told in this book. And so I would definitely recommend it. It really makes you think about who people are, psychology, and like just life and like what other people are going through that you don't know about. So I honestly really recommend it if you're looking for something heavy but thought provoking. Okay, I also read the entire Raven cycle. So 4 books: Raven Boys, something else, Dream Thieves, Blue Lily, Lily Blue, The Raven King. So I read these books all on audiobook, and I went through about one a week. And these books were super, super fun to read. The characters are fantastic, and the narrator was really good, I thought. So it became like a friend where it's just like you have them around all the time. And then when it's over, you're like really sad about it. Yeah, I guess that's any book series, to be honest. But this one really got me that way. So I very, very much enjoyed it. Some critical thoughts on this. I thought the plot was like the wonkiest thing I've ever read. Like, it was so bizarre. It brought in so many fantastical elements that are completely unbelievable. And yet, it was just like so simply stated that this stuff kept happening that I was just like, okay, sure, that happens, and then that happens, and then that happens. And some of the stuff was really hard to picture, just like the events that happened in this book, like the plot was weird. But what was so amazing about these books was the characters and the characterization and the writing style. Like, after reading these books, I was like, okay, I want this to be my writing style for the rest of my life. Like, it was just incredible the way things were described, like how poetic things were. The main strength was the characterization. I think this story, in my mind, is a little bit of a coming of age story. So it doesn't happen over that long of a time, but it's a very transitional time period for people, for teenagers, where they're kind of going through the later years of high school into graduation. And it was very much like a coming of age story in that way, where a group of friends are saying, who am I? And who am I compared to other people, and who are we as a group, and how are we different from our parents? What do we want to be? And it was very much like people defining who they are. It was like a character study of all these people just observing each other and growing to really care about each other. If you want to read a book or a series of books that is just very much found family and embodies, like, I think the friend group that most of us wanted to have when we were in high school, that would be these books. They're not hard for me to recommend because I really just feel like the characters are so fantastic that it's worth it. But it's weird for me because I'm like, the plot is just really not great. The fact that they did one aspect of the book so well to get me to believe in the rest of it is like astounding to me. So that's my take on the Raven Boys. I give the whole cycle about a 3 stars, just averaging out the things it did well, the things it did not do as well. Those characters will live on in my brain for a long time. The next thing to talk about is Fourth Wing. Okay, I think I'm probably gonna have to do some type of analysis video on this because of the hype around it. It needs to be dissected more than just like a here's what I read video. So I'm not going to really talk too much about this one. Here's what I'll say. I give this a 4 star, which, if you've just heard everything I've said, I barely ever give anything above like a 3.5. So 4 stars is really good. So yeah, I really liked this book and I continued thinking about it after I read it. Like, I was very, very hooked by it, but not until like 50 to 70% through it. I thought it was kind of goofy until things got a little bit more serious, but I thought that she made a really likable main character and the romance was great. It was actually really well done for an enemies to lovers story where the enemies aren't so cruel to each other that like you can never see them getting together, and there's like a grudging respect there that grows into love. And the ending twist was awesome. Like, my mouth just dropped open and I was like, yes, amazing. Of course, there are things to criticize. There are a lot of things to criticize, especially in the first half. Like, I wasn't super super into it until the later parts. So yeah, there are definitely things to talk about there with things that she could have done better, but clearly she did enough things well that you literally can't find this book on the shelves. So more on that probably to come. I make no promises, but I may be doing some more analysis of that book later. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Okay, I think I give this book like a 2.5. And this is not because I think she did anything wrong. I just didn't love it that much. But I'm super glad I read it. It wasn't one of those books where I was like, oh, this was a waste of my time. Like, no, super glad that I read it. But it was so weird. It was like Hunger Games, which sets you up for incredibly high stakes, right? Like, everyone's gonna die, all this stuff. And there were high stakes, but not for the main character. And I was always like, when is the other shoe gonna drop? And it just never quite drops. And so it had me in like gut wrenching suspense the whole time and then never released. Really a weird reading experience because I was expecting Hunger Games. The main character is President Snow. So it's obviously a villain origin story. So it's like we know that he survives this, right? Like, that's the only thing we know. Yeah, the ending twist did again have me just like mouth dropping open, like, what? Oh my gosh. I think it also answered some questions I have about President Snow as a person. I will say nothing more. So that was The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I'm very glad that I have that context, and I'm really excited to see the movie. The final thing I have to talk about that I read is The Cruel Prince. So, you guys, I don't really know what we're doing here with this one. I read this because I see it literally everywhere. I was like, okay, people are going nuts over this series, so like I have to know what it is. Okay, don't click away from this video, just hear me out. I rated the first book, The Cruel Prince, a 1 star. This is for a lot of reasons, mainly that I just didn't like anything about it. The only thing I liked about it was the ending twist. I guess I'm a sucker for ending twists. But if that's your only redeeming quality, like if I have to get to the last 3% of the book to like it, then there's something wrong. So I would be curious to know why people do like this book, because I have not yet heard a case for like what people like about it. So if you have a case for that and you really loved it, I would love to hear, because I seriously like I want to understand why this is like such a big deal. Okay, Brandon Sanderson has a concept called scales of likability. This is how to rate a character's likability on 3 different scales. Number 1, relatability. Number 2 is proactivity. Number 3 is competence. So the idea here is that you need, for a main character, a likable main character, you need to be high on 2 of these 3 scales. And if you're high on none of the 3, you definitely shouldn't be a main character and you're probably going to not be very likable. Okay, let's talk about Carden for a second. So, what we have is a man who is a 0 on relatability, a 0 on competency, and a 0 on proactivity. Do you know what this creates? This creates a deeply unlikable character. So, why do people like him? It's sex appeal. That's what it is, people. It does nothing for me. So I think that he's the appeal of this book. So if I have absolutely no love for him, then I feel like I'm just not going to enjoy this book. And so I feel like that follows. Okay, let's think about Jude. So I don't like her very much in the first book, but I like her in the second book. Cruel Prince number 1, I just don't enjoy and was honestly going to DNF the series, but then I was like, okay, people say it gets better. So what if I just hang on a little bit? So I listened to The Wicked King, and I like that book way better because she's super proactive, but she's also pretty competent. Like she's very competent. And she has like much more relatable goals. And I think the romance is a little bit better in this one. And then what's fun is that nearing the end, we see Carden actually become proactive. And so that's what I was like, okay, this man is thinking, he's like waking up, he's getting involved. So I think that there were definitely some redeeming qualities about the second one. I would give the second one like a 3 out of 5 stars. The first one is like, it's not going above a 1 for me. Okay, so that's The Cruel Prince. I'm going to read the third one at some point soon, as soon as the audiobook is available on Libby. And then the last thing to talk about is what I'm reading next, which is this. So I've been waiting to read this series for probably years, since my sister told me about it and she was like, hey, you'd like this. And I was like, I don't really read right now. Then I put it off because it has a million books and they are super, super long. And I didn't really want to take that commitment because I was trying to just like, get exposure to the rest of the genre. But it's time. I basically cleared my TBR schedule for the summer and I'm going to read these. So I'm very interested to see why people love it. Yeah, to just get into all of that. So maybe I will share thoughts. Maybe if I don't like it, I will keep them to myself. I'm not sure. Thank you for watching my little recap of everything I've been reading lately. I've been reading much. And if you have opinions on these books that are different from mine, I would love to hear about it in the comments. I'm always up for a good debate. I'm also just up for being enlightened about what other people like about these books that maybe I missed. So let me know, and I would love to talk about it. Okay, thanks so much for watching. Happy writing and reading, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.